Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another episode of recommending books to video game characters. In honor of Halloween, I thought it would be fun to, this month, recommend books to Agent 47 from the Hitman games, who famously wears a bunch of different disguises and costumes while going about his murdery business. General gist of it is you play as this bald guy named Agent 47, who is an assassin, and you have to, like, puzzle out how to assassinate your targets with various costumes and different tools, and it's very much what I would call a puzzle game. I think more than anything, it's a puzzle game, and it's a really, really good one. I really enjoy the Hitman games. I really enjoy all the silly costumes that you have in the game, and I thought it would be fun to talk about some of his costumes. So, first up, we're going to talk about the one that I feel like has the most obvious recommendation. And that means we're going to be starting with the Superfan costume, which looks like this. It's a little bit like Ghostface in Scream, just a touch, but like color inverted. But this particular costume is a costume of a person who is, as the title would suggest, a superfan of an author of what I have to guess is some sort of like urban fantasy series. He's a massive fan of this writer named Craig Black, and you originally encounter the superfan kind of walking around in the sewers underneath the church where Craig Black is doing a event, sort of a small VIP signing and reading event. All of that aside, I think the book that most obviously connects with the superfan costume is Misery by Stephen King, particularly because Craig Black doesn't seem to like his fans very much. He's kind of self-absorbed, kind of a jerk. But Misery by Stephen King follows a guy named Paul, who is also a novelist, and he's kind of a self-absorbed jerk, if we're honest. And he is trapped in a house with his biggest fan, who happens to rescue him after he's in a horrible car accident, and things get much, much worse for him from there. So this is, I think, of the two Stephen Kings I've read, this is my favorite. I've only read the two, so I don't have a whole lot of context on which to base that opinion. But I really enjoyed this one. I think it's very atmospheric. I think that it does a really good job of establishing like a creeping dread. And I think that Paul is a really interesting character because, again, he's kind of unlikable in a lot of ways, but you still kind of root for him because the situation he's in is so horrific. The way that he deals with the situation is interesting. I just think it's a really fascinating concept that Stephen King has come up with here, and I did really enjoy the reading experience. I think there's some really great imagery and metaphors in here as well. The next costume we're going to talk about is Helmut Kruger, who happens to be a model who is bald, and so obviously you can steal his clothes. You can even get your makeup done and walk the runway as Helmut Kruger while playing as Agent 47, and I think that the perfect recommendation for this is Tiny Threads by Lilium Rivera. This is a horror novel, and by the way, these are all horror novels. I didn't realize until I was finished making the list, but these are all horror novels. But this particular one is a horror novel about the fashion industry. We're following a young woman who's kind of gotten her dream job working for her favorite designer out in California. She moves there from her family home, and she seems to have had some sort of like rift with her family just before she left to take up this particular job. And things go quite poorly for her when she arrives because the fashion designer she's working for is really volatile and toxic, and there's very much a culture of like trying to claw your way up the hierarchy by any means at his company. There's also apparently some sort of ghost haunting her apartment, so she's got a lot going on, and obviously the stress is getting to her. I thought it was a really interesting book. I didn't love this one, but I do think it has some interesting ideas around family and around the fashion industry, so I would generally recommend it. I think a lot of other people will connect with it a lot more than I did. The third costume we have to talk about is the Vampire Magician, and we have to talk about the Vampire Magician because look at it. It's so silly. And because it is so silly, the recommendation I have for this one is, let me grab it, Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is such a weird book. Take everything you know about modern Dracula adaptations and throw it out the window, because the original book is not at all like any of the adaptations of which I am aware. It is a deeply weird book. The vampire has a mustache. There's a cowboy for some reason. Everybody is super weird. A lot of the book is just Van Helsing traipsing around England, adopting people, going, and now you're my child, and you're my child, and you're my child. And it's just very silly. It's very, like, relationship oriented. There is some really genuinely good horror in here, but, like, a few different kinds of horror. It plays on a few different ideas. It's just really great. It's really, really weird, but it's really great. and I think that everybody should read Dracula at least once. Next up, we have the flamingo mascot, which is one of my favorite costumes because it's just so goofy, watching Agent 47 walking around in this like big mascot costume, but like choking people out in it. It's very strange. It's a very silly visual. But I think because of that, because it's this like very silly visual for what is really a quite dark set of behaviors that are happening in it, I have to recommend The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. Now, T. Kingfisher is one of my favorite horror authors. She really nails the combination of humor and horror, and it's for that reason I think that this fits, because her books are always kind of funny. They've got lots of quirky characters and lots of weird things happening, and they're so funny that they tend to kind of lull me into a false sense of assurance that like things are fine, and then suddenly I get blindsided with some really horrible description. The Twisted Ones in particular has a very specific scene that almost had me throwing my Kindle across the room. It was made to scare me specifically, and the only thing I will say about that is that I really hate spooky dark windows. We'll leave it at that. But The Twisted Ones is just fantastic. We're following a young woman who is traveling to her grandmother's home after her grandmother has passed away. Her grandmother was a hoarder, and she's trying to clean out the home so that they can like sell it. And she ends up, kind of in the process of cleaning, finding her step-grandfather's journal. And she starts reading it, and it sends her on this sort of like journey into madness, and I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really cool. Very atmospheric, very descriptive in ways that were really unsettling, and again, just has some really horrific moments that scared me specifically, and I think will scare a lot of people as well. Penultimate costume I want to talk about is Florida Man. I don't feel like I have to say anything else about Florida Man other than Florida Man. And the recommendation for this one is The Pale House Devil by Richard Kadrey. This is a weird little book about these two people. Their names are escaping me. I think it's Ford and Newland. Yes, Ford and Newland. And one of them is alive and the other one is undead. And the one who's alive only kills the undead, and the one who's undead only kills people who are living. And they're basically mercenaries. They travel around doing whatever is asked of them, whoever's paying them to do something. And they start this book kind of on the run, having not fulfilled their previous contract and having done so in quite a dramatic fashion. So they find themselves on the run when they are approached and asked to take on this effort to deal with the Pale House Devil. And this book is very weird. A lot of it feels more like a road trip book. They end up making a new friend, and like this trio goes around just kind of like going to the carnival and stuff like that. So it's this very silly tone and with lots of very dark things happening. It's not scary in quite the same way as like the Twisted Ones, where I think the Twisted Ones kind of like lulls you into that false sense of security and then just like punches you with a really scary image. This one I think maintains kind of a silly tone throughout, even when there are like really horrific things happening, and it gives it this really interesting feel to it. There's a very interesting set of character voices in here, and it just was a silly romp through a horror landscape, and I really enjoyed that. It was really fun, but I feel like Ford and Newland and the way that they approach things kind of embody the idea of the Florida Man. Finally, our last costume is the Knight Armor, which is in, I think, the third game. But this one I think is interesting because this particular costume actually makes the entire area hostile to you. It's actually really unhelpful to try and wear the Knight Armor, but it is still very funny. And I want to recommend In the Shadow of the Axe by Nicholas Kaufman for this one. This story is about this young man in the kind of mid-19th century returning to a small German village where he grew up. His father's recently died. His father's a sort of respected, I don't want to say respected elder, because I don't think his father is very old, but he's like this respected man in the community, and a lot of people loved him, and a lot of people have kind of forgotten that he had a son who's been away at boarding school. And the book is kind of about him returning to this place and grappling with the difference in experience that he's had with his father in comparison with the way that the villagers view him. And when he arrives, he really finds that there's a lot of hostility towards him, and at the same time there is this weird sinister presence from a local mountain where there's this like big spooky castle where supposedly a guy called, what is he called? The Necromancer. Spooky guy called the Necromancer used to live in this castle and had kind of dominion over the people of the village at some point in the past. And he's starting to be active again, or appears to be maybe being active again, and there's just like a lot of hostile, sinister forces happening in here for our main character. I believe also the necromancer is depicted as wearing like a full suit of armor, so that's kind of fun too. But yeah, it's just a weird, interesting book that's grappling with how this man feels about his father and what he learns about his father as he is engaging with people who saw his father in a very different light than he did. So those are all of my recommendations for Agent 47 and his various costumes. I just thought this would be a fun little idea, and I honestly had a lot of fun putting together the list. It was silly trying to decide like what book went with each costume. So let me know down in the comments below if you've enjoyed this, and definitely let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts were on them. I really hope you've enjoyed this video though, and if you have, I hope you consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting a new video every week, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.